The Jarek Armada moved like living shadows through the cosmic expanse, an unbroken line of obsidian warships stretching from the edge of the Corvin sector to the flaming heart of the Sunder cluster. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, its hull forged from crystalline alloys that shimmered with bioluminescent glyphs, its engines exhaling plumes of cobalt plasma that danced like ghostly serpents in the void. To witness the Armada's approach was to stare into oblivion. On the bridge of the flagship Verkar, Admiral Zilyen stood solitary beneath the vaulted canopy of translucent durasteel. Pale luminescence traced the contours of his many-jointed exoskeleton, and his segmented eyes, deep-set and liquid black, reflected the tactical holomap as it pulsed with the names of conquered worlds. His command chair, carved from the rib of a titanic leviathan husk, groaned softly as he shifted his weight. Around him, the bridge grew tall and slender, with fingers like blade tips worked in a near-silent ballet, fingers dancing over holo controls that beeped and clicked under their touch. Status report. Zilyen's voice rasped each word, resonating through the bridge's acoustic matrix. Lieutenant Shakther, voice smooth as oil, replied, "All sectors report secure. The last pockets of resistance on Screen Prime have surrendered. Population extraction and biomining operations commence per your orders." "Good," Zilyen murmured. He flicked a mandible-like antenna in approval. "Prepare to transition command to Sector Lord Dmer on the surface. I wish to oversee the integration of the Corvin biolabs personally." As Shakther acknowledged, the holomap zoomed in on a brilliant green orb ringed by amber clouds. Below, tendrils of crystalline scaffolding wound around towering fungal spires. Jarek biolabs excavating the planet's unique mycelial network. Screen Prime's lush forests had once teemed with amphibious mersingers, now bioengineered. Drones harvested their spores to produce biologically reactive fuel cells. Zilyen turned away. The conquest of Corvin was but a prelude. Beyond this sector lay the glimmering jewel worlds of the Sunder cluster, worlds of floating arc cities and sky farms ripe for the plunder. His mind, cold and logical, calculated resource yields, troop deployments, and timelines. The Jarek war machine never paused. It devoured system after system until entire star clusters lay silent in its wake. Yet among the chatter of tactical readouts, a single transmission crackled through the encrypted calm channels, a faint, garbled echo. Shakther intercepted it first, her eyes narrowing as she amplified the feed. On the holo display, a lone silhouette drifted against the boundless black. A single ship, small, angular, its hull mottled and scarred. "Admiral," Shakther said, tone wary, "we're receiving an unidentified signal. It appears to be a vessel of human design." Zilyen's multifaceted eyes shifted to the projection. Human scattered remnants of the Milky Way's once proud federated colonies were rumored to survive on the fringes, but they had been hunted nearly to extinction. No human fleet could challenge the Armada. No human ship could penetrate Jarek defenses. "Impossible," Zilyen whispered. "Humans lack the technology to mask their signature at this range." He gestured sharply. "Enhance the scan. Isolate the vessel's transponder code." Seconds later, binary text scrolled beneath the ship's silhouette. "Aurora's Wrath." The name merited no reaction, an arbitrary designation among billions of starborn craft, until the feed loaded a secondary data packet. Tactical readouts, showing multiple pulse lance strikes against 3 Jarek scouts in rapid succession. "Report." Zilyen demanded, the first tremor of agitation in his voice. "How many casualties?" Shakther's mandibles clicked. "All 3 ships were destroyed within 40 seconds. No distress call from the pilots. Hull fragmentation suggests ultra-high-energy quantum torpedoes, weapons signatures inconsistent with any known human arsenal." A low hum resonated through the Verkar's deck plates. "Alert status." Zilyen's mind raced. A lone human ship, armed with quantum torpedoes, could single-handedly shred Jarek destroyers. If this vessel appeared in the next cluster, entire sectors could slip from their grasp. "Raise fleet readiness to amber," he ordered. "Issue recall to all forward reconnaissance units. Prepare the squadrons." Without delay, the bridge burst into action. In the hangar bays, squadrons of sleek, winged fighters thundered to life. their wingtip generators flaring as pilot crews donned exosuits. Across the armada, destroyers broke formation and pivoted toward the anomaly's coordinates. Moments later, Zillian's holomap shifted to a wider field. 3 Jarak destroyers, triangular and lethal, closed on a lone vessel whose battered hull bore scorch marks and patched plating. Against the infinite dark, it glowed with defiance. "Admiral," Shakther said softly, "the vessel is drifting toward the Sunder cluster. It may engage local defenses." Zillian's segmented fingers curled into a fist. The Sunder worlds were due for assimilation within the fortnight. He would not allow a lone renegade to sow discord among newly subjugated populations. Such insolence demanded correction swift and absolute. "Lock targeting arrays," he commanded. "Fire at once." Across the comm network, a symphony of energy beams converged on the human craft. Brilliant strokes of violet plasma carved through the darkness, converging like fingers of death. But instead of exploding in a spectacular fireworks, the beams flickered against an unseen barrier. Their energy dissipated against a shimmering bubble of interference, shields absorbing impact. Shakther reported, disbelief edging her tone. "The vessel's emissions are shielding the entire cluster." Zillian felt an unfamiliar warmth at the base of his mandibles. Frustration. He replayed the data. No known technology could project a shielding field of that magnitude from a single hull. This was no mere pirate. This was a force multiplier capable of changing the war's outcome. "Deploy the auxiliary dreadnoughts," Zillian ordered, voice colder than ice. "I want this human ship eradicated, no survivors." As the Verkar pivoted to lead the charge, its crystalline hull refracting the light of distant suns, Admiral Zillian allowed himself one final thought before battle. If this Aurora's wrath truly held power enough to thwart the Jarak armada, then perhaps the legends of human defiance were not mere myth. Perhaps, in the coming conflict, the conquerors themselves would find defeat to face a force more relentless than any they had known. And thus, as the first volleys of the final war echoed through the Sunder cluster's empty skies, the tide of conquest that had once been unstoppable now met its greatest challenge. A single human ship, bristling with forbidden technology, stood between the Jarak and total domination, and in its wake, the cosmos would never be the same. In the black cradle between 2 dying stars, the Aurora's wrath drifted, a solitary silhouette carved against the void. The ship's hull was a mosaic of battle scars and hastily welded patches, testament to the ferocious firefights she had already endured. Where her plating had buckled, gleaming repair conduits traced jagged lines of neon blue, pumping cryogenic coolant into vulnerable seams. Yet even in this state, she radiated a savage elegance, sleek contours inspired by centuries of human starcraft, coupled with the cutting-edge innovations of Elysium Prime's clandestine shipyards. Inside the bridge, Captain Mara Celine stood before the main viewport, arms folded, her russet hair drawn back in a functional braid that swung like a pendulum. With her measured breaths, she was tall, her lean frame trained by years of refusal to surrender. Her eyes ore brown and resolute scanned the impenetrable darkness, as if expecting the enemy to materialize at any moment. Behind her, the bridge crew hummed with tense energy. First Officer Joss Varen, whose cybernetic right eye glowed with battlefield computations. Tactical Chief Hannah Talon Yuri, whose fingertips could ignite targeting arrays faster than any computer. And Engineer Lynn Asami, whose fingers danced across maintenance consoles, monitoring the ship's fluctuating power matrix. Status report, Mara intoned, voice calm but carrying the weight of command. Joss' optical implant flickered as he cycled through sensor logs. The Sunder cluster jump went without incident. Long-range scans show no Jarak battle groups within standard interdiction corridors. Local orbital defenses stand ready, but they were overwhelmed once before. They're holding formation away from their heavy gun emplacements, presumably awaiting our assault. Awaiting our assault, Mara echoed, a bitter smile curving her lips. They still haven't grasped the meaning of that phrase. She paused, letting the gravity of their mission settle over the bridge like a mantle. Prepare the quantum torpedo bays. I want a full diagnostic and reload bay 3. Lynn's fingers flew over her console. Quantum array at 78%. Flux stabilizers are within tolerances. but deploying live warheads before we're back to 95 risks catastrophic discharge. Mara inclined her head thoughtfully. Understood. Charge them to 90% and keep me posted. A soft chime alerted them to a new transmission. Hannah tapped her headset. Incoming encrypted Confederation standard code. Mara's hand went to her sidearm as Joss cracked the cipher. On the central holodisplay flickered the crest of the Free Colonies, a 7-pointed star rising over a stylized human silhouette. Below it scrolled a single phrase, "Hold the line." Beneath the message, a discrete data packet opened, images of ravaged colony world cities, reduced to smoldering skeletons, refugees huddled in makeshift camps, children in tattered uniforms, clutching battered communists. The final frame showed a desperate plea. To every captain who still fights, rally at Nova Arbor. The final war begins. A hush fell over the bridge. For every star that had slipped from humanity's grasp, for every world enslaved or consumed. This was their rallying cry. This was why the Aurora's wrath existed, not as a mere instrument of vengeance, but as a beacon of hope. Mara exhaled. Set course for Nova Arbor. Engage stealth field. We cannot afford to announce our arrival. Stealth field engaging. Hannah confirmed, sealing the ship in a cloak of quantum distortion. The stars beyond the viewport shimmered, then vanished. The ship became a shadow among shadows. As the Wrath slipped into sublight toward the human stronghold, flashbacks flickered behind Mara's eyes. Her home world, Chalion 5, consumed by the Jarek in a single day, her family's screams echoing. In Carter's flooded with lethal nanites, her own narrow escape aboard a smuggler's freighter. Then the years in the Free Colonies, training under guerrilla masters, surviving ambushes on ice moons and desert outposts. Each memory stoked the fire within her chest. "Captain," Joss said quietly, "we just picked up high-velocity fragments on the cluster's inbound lanes. Probably escape pods or debris. Signature matches Jarek plasma rounds." "Meaning?" Mara asked. "That commander didn't just disappear after our skirmish. He may have retreated to fight another day. And if he sent reinforcements," Mara's jaw tightened, "then we'll show them why they should have stayed dead." She turned to Hannah. "Arm the point defense lasers. I want every missile, drone, and torpedo intercepted before it gets near the hull." Talon's grin was feral. "Consider it done." 3 days later, the Aurora's wrath glided into the Nova Arbor system under full cloak. Twin emerald green. Suns bathed the planet's azure oceans and vibrant landmasses in warm light. Orbital platforms bristled with artillery emplacements, and thick cloud banks swirled around the planet's equatorial ring like a giant halo. Approaching jump point, Hannah noted. Local defense grid offline, presumably so they can avoid detection from Jarek sensors on the tactical display. Mara traced the ridges of the planet's surface. The city of Sanctum Prime, Nova Arbor's capital, lay nestled amid crystalline spires. It was here, in the underlevels, that the Free Colonies High Council had transformed ancient bunkers into a fortress city. Kilometers of reinforced tunnels, energy fortresses carved into bedrock, and shield generators thrumming beneath the streets. "Plot the orbital insertion following the convoy vectors," Mara said. "Then drop cloak 50,000 kilometers from the planet. We rendezvous at the rally point." Joss plotted the course. "Convoy ETA. For ours, we'll match speed and angle." "Good." Mara closed her eyes for a moment. "In for ours, their ragged fleet of transports and corvettes, refugees and marines, engineers and diplomats would stream through that very point. They would need the Wrath's escort to survive the Jarek's relentless probes." She opened her eyes, steel in her gaze. "Alert all hands. Battle stations. Below deck." The crew braced themselves. Cargo holds were cleared to make room for evacuees. Medical bays readied triage units. Marines sharpened blades and loaded magazines. And Jedi-like engineers calibrated the torpedo rays for maximum yield. Everyone knew the cost of failure, the loss of the last beacon of human resistance. On the bridge, Mara Celine steadied herself against the command rail, listening to the ship's heartbeat through her boots. Her lips curved into a silent vow. Should the Jarek descend in a tide of steel, she would stand firm. She would show them that humanity, though battered, remained unbroken. That a single ship, one captain, and her crew could still turn the tide of war. And as the Aurora's wrath slid through the final parsec toward the cauldron of conflict, Mara whispered an invocation carried by the ship's calm static into the void beyond. Let them come. The Europa-class jump gate shimmered like a fractured mirror against the backdrop of Sunder's edge, the outermost world of the Sunder cluster. Beneath its fractured luminescence lay a war-zone rings of orbital platforms bristling with heavy cannons, their targeting arrays tracing invisible lines through the void. Human and Jarek vessels loomed on all sides, preparing for the inevitable reckoning. I, the gathering storm at the helm of the Aurora's wrath, Captain Mara Celine watched. The orbital grid's calm feeds flicker to life. Holographic icons representing transports, corvettes, and frigates cascaded across her display. 24 vessels, fragile but defiant, on approach from the Nova Arbor convoy. In the distance, Jarek destroyers and cruisers churned toward the gate in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls gleaming with predatory intent. Distance to gate, 12,000 clicks and closing, reported Tactical Chief Hannah Talon Yuri. Her cybernetic eye rotated in its socket, crunching vectors at nanosecond precision. Launch point defense drones, Mara ordered. We'll need a solid bubble to cover the convoy's emergence. Below the flight deck, swarms of sleek drone pods unfurled like metallic lotus blooms. Each drone armed itself with rapid-fire railguns and micromissiles. As they accelerated into formation, Mara felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as if the ship itself inhaled, preparing to roar into battle. First blood, first shriek of combat came 20 seconds before the convoys emerged. A pair of Jarek fighters, swift, winged interceptors sliced through the void. Plasma lances cracking in their wingtips, they struck a human corvette in the convoy's rear, tearing a jagged hole in its port side. Point drones, intercept. Hannah barked. Within moments, the drone swarm veered into action. Railgun slugs rippled through the void, slamming into the wing roots of the lead Jarek fighter. Its hull fractured in a shower of prism shards, and the pilot ejected into the abyss. A second fighter, startled, attempted evasive maneuvers, but a micromissile struck its dorsal fin, sending it spiraling into the corvette's hull. The resulting explosion shook the Wrath's decks like thunder. Casualty report, Mara demanded, voice cold. Corvette CCR-19 critically damaged. Life support failing, replied Joss Varen. Convoy morale dropping. Some transports are diverting to inner orbits. Mara's jaw hardened. Then we light the beacon, prepare to decklock and engage. 3. The shield breaker ballet. Decklock in 3, 2, 1. The Aurora's wrath shed its quantum shroud in a pulse of subspace distortion. Stars snapped into focus. 30 Jarek warships ranging from agile destroyers to hulking dreadnoughts sterned their bow, weapons toward the lone human ship. Within seconds, the void was rent by converging beams of violet plasma, each bolt screaming with lethal intent, shields holding at 80%. Lynn Asami reported from engineering. Sweat beaded her brow as power redistributed between reactor cores and defensive grids. Fire quantum torpedoes, Mara commanded. Pattern Gamma 2 target the Vanguard destroyers. Two pods slipped from the Wrath's belly, their warheads glowing with compressed dark matter flux. They streaked forward, weaving between enemy fire, in a brilliant arc of silvery light. They struck the first 2 destroyers in their port flanks. The explosions bloomed into fiery coronas, tearing away armor and collapsing internal structures. The shockwave rattled the nearby transports, forcing them to vent emergency thrust to maintain station. Internal comms reports heavy casualties on Jarek's side. Joss said, voice grim. Fighter wings down to 60% strength. Keep up the pressure, Mara replied. Hannah, vector our drones to flank the leftmost squadrons. Joss, prepare boarding pods when I give the word. As drone swarms diverged into razor-thin arcs, the Jarek answered with their own countermeasures, gravity mines, photonic nets, and waves of seeker missiles. The Wrath's point defenses erupted in a constellation of tracer fire. Each volley annihilated dozens of incoming threats, but each interception cost precious energy. On the bridge, alarms chimed intermittently. Mara's eyes flicked from one tactical feed to the next. The convoy's transports, inspired by her defiance, held formation. Marines readied their ampliform rifles, medics strapped triage packs to their belts for breach and board, sir. Hannah interrupted. Vorkar is approaching at flank speed. They're using a gravity well projector to collapse our formation. Zillien's flagship crept closer like a phantom dreadnought. Its pale hull rippled with sublight distortion fields, meant to crush any vessel within its singularity well. If it completed the charge, the Aurora's wrath and half the convoy would be torn to subatomic fragments. Joss, Mara said. Now, boarding pods away. 19 boarding pods shot forth like metallic arrows, their magnetic grapples sizzling as they latched onto Vorkar's hull. Within heartbeats, sealed hatches jettisoned, and red-armored Marines poured into the enemy. Ships pitted corridors. Plasma blasts erupted, searing through crystalline walls. Armored claws shrieked against woven durasteel, and cries of victory and agony echoed in the void-dark spaces. Mara activated her personal comm. Team Alpha, objective, gravity well projector. Team Bravo, secure the bridge. A crackling response. Alpha copies, Bravo copies, below. Engineers led by Lieutenant Sarah Rush hacked control nodes, her exogloves dancing over alien sigil keys. The projectors faltered. Alarms triggered as systems overloaded. Outside, the hull itself seemed to shudder. On the Wrath, the gravity distortions round Vorkar collapsed. Its projector fizzled into silence. The Jarek destroyers, stripped of the dreadnought's cover, became prey to the Wrath's torpedo. Batteries once more. 2 more exploded in ion storms. The turning point, a final volley from the Wrath's array rent open Vorkar's dorsal plating. The dreadnought spun in the void, its engines flaring in distress. As the boarding teams carved their path toward the command deck, Mara prepared to make her entrance. She donned her pulse blade's power ring and activated its humming blade. Rora, to bridge, she said. I'm joining the boarding effort. Understood, Captain, Joss replied. All non-essential personnel, begin evac protocols. You have 90 seconds before the hull goes critical. Mara sprinted down the maintenance hatch, jet boosters propelling her across the void between ships. She slammed through the shattered viewport into Vorkar's main corridor. Crystal shards skittered across the floor. Molten conduits dripped fluidic luminescence. Jarek warriors, exoskeletal giants, bristling with blade lances, turned. In unison, the duel was swift. Pulse blade met crystalline lance in a cascade of sparks. Each strike reverberated through the corridor. Beneath a cascade of shards, Mara felled to warriors before they could react, muscle memory honed through endless drills. Her third foe unleashed a blast from his wrist cannon, striking her assault suit. The impact sent her skidding back, visor flickering. She regained balance, ignited her blade, and leapt. Time slowed. She disarmed him, then drove the blade through his chest in a shower of luminous blood. The corridor erupted in alarms as the gravity wells collapsed entirely. Above in the void, Vorkar's engines overloaded, the dreadnought fractured. In a silent supernova, shards of crystalline armor arching outward like lethal meteors. The remaining Jarek vessels, leaderless and chastised, initiated retreat protocols. A chorus of cheers rippled through calm channels aboard the Aurora's Wrath. Marines separated from the void as escape shuttles ferried survivors and prisoners back to the convoy. Transports ignited thrust, carrying wounded home. Vi. Aftermath in the bridge. Captain Celine pressed a hand to the rail. Chest heaving. Report, she said softly. Jarek fleet dispersed, Hannah answered. Convoy intact, casualties under 15%. We held the line. Mara allowed herself a brief nod. Round her, the Wrath's crew exhaled in relief through the battered viewport. The burning fragments of Vorkar glowed like dying embers. She turned to Joss. Plot. Course back to Nova Arbor. We'll need to refit and heal our wounds, both ship and soul. His reply was steady. Aye, Captain. As the Aurora's Wrath limped away from Sunder's edge, a single thought resonated in Mara's mind. The Jarek had tasted defeat for the first time in centuries, and now the final war loomed on the horizon. The forge of conflict had tempered humanity anew, and in Nova Arbor's crucible, the last great battle would soon be joined. And so, with battered shields and hearts unbroken, they sailed toward the war's greatest storm. Aye, The gathering at Nova Arbor beneath the twin suns of Nova Arbor. The remnants of human civilization braced for the reckoning. The planet's surface was a tapestry of gleaming shield domes, and subterranean fortresses, vast complexes hewn into crystalline bedrock and reinforced with alloyed adamant. Overhead, orbital bastions and gun platforms bristled like iron thorns, ready to tear the sky's invaders apart. Across the system's jump lanes, human and Jarak armadas assembled, each force a mirror of the other, tens of thousands of vessels, from nimble fighters to colossal dreadnoughts, poised to collide in the greatest battle the Outer Rim had ever witnessed. On the deck of the Aurora's Wrath, Captain Mara Celine stood with her senior officers. Data scrolls hovered in holospace before them, mapping out enemy dispositions, planetary defenses, and fleet maneuvers in thrumming strands of light. Admiral Zilien's flagship is here, Tactical Chief Hannah Talon Yuri said, highlighting a triangular icon nearly 20 kilometers across, Verkar to a rebuilt dreadnought, 10 times the mass of the original. Mara's jaw tightened. He's mortgaged every resource to this engagement. If Verkar falls, the Jarak will lose command cohesion across every theater. First Officer Joss Varen tapped a secondary holoplane. We've recalibrated the quantum torpedoes for maximum yield. If we can breach the primary shield ring, we can trigger a cascade failure across the fleet's deflector lattices. Mara nodded. Good. Engineer Asami, status on the torpedo bays below deck. Lin Asami's voice crackled over comm. Rays are at full charge, but we'll need to clear the bay corridor. Department 9 reports hull stress at 75% after Sunder's edge. Understood. Mara replied. Proceed with emergency hull plating. We launch in T-minus 30 minutes. The captain turned her gaze to the viewport. A tide of steel and plasma crept toward Nova Arbor's defenses. Dreadnoughts scratched the upper atmosphere. Fighter swarms rippled like flocks of metal birds. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Jarak High Council prayed for victory. Crew of the Aurora's Wrath, Mara's voice boomed over the comm. Net, today we carry the hopes of every human who ever suffered under their tyranny. Remember why we fight for our worlds, our families, and our freedom. Hold nothing back. Let our defiance be the spark that ignites the galaxy. A unified cheer answered her, echoing through every hull and airlock. The opening salvo at the outermost defense ring. The battle erupted in a symphony of light and fury. Plasma lances carved arcs across star-black skies. Mass drivers pelted shields with hyperdense rounds. Missile broadsides bloomed like gardens of flame. Human orbital platforms, a network of overlapping energy barriers, held firm against the first onslaught, their generators screaming under the strain. The Aurora's Wrath led the vanguard, decloaking in a pulse that scattered adjacent Jarak fighters. Mara's voice cut through the cacophony. All wings, form on me. We run the gauntlet to the inner ring. Cover our transports. Wing Commander Ree's corvette sliced forward, trailing for squadrons of fighters. They wove through debris fields, drawing fire and baiting Jarak interceptors into vector traps. In rapid succession, Talon's drones struck from above, severing energy lines and disabling targeting arrays on hostile cruisers. Shields at 60%, reported Lin Asami. We're taking concentrated fire from the destroyer squadrons. Hold. Together, Mara responded. Deploy countermeasures and run silent. She pressed a switch on her console, ejecting commo nets that masked the Wrath's heat signature. Plasma bolts scorched empty space as she slipped through the enemy cordon, jets flaring in the void. Behind her, the convoy of transports laden with refugees, Marines, and salvagers poured through the breach, each transport released individually. Shielded drop pods, which plummeted through the planet's atmosphere toward designated fortress drop zones. Below, human heavy infantry and mechanized armor units braced for orbital bombardment. 3. The heart of battle in high orbit. Admiral Zilien's fleet coalesced around Verkar to like wolves around a carcass. The dreadnought's dragon scale. Armor gleamed with anti-ship turrets and gravity beam projectors. Zilien, clad in his ceremonial war exosuit, stood upon the bridge's command balcony, observing the fray through multifaceted lenses. Target the transports decelerating into atmosphere, he commanded. We will starve them of reinforcements. His tactical holomap pulsed red, marking each falling human ship. Yet when he issued the order, his interface flickered 24 obfuscated contacts, slipped into vector nulls, then reappeared behind. His destroyer picket, Mara's wing of stealth fighters, had outflanked him. Strike Group Alpha. Mara's voice crackled. Hit his flank. Draw the fleet's fire. In an instant, the stealth fighters accelerated, vaporizing anti-fighter. Arrays with sudden kinetic charges, Jarek cruisers veered, their flanks exposed to Mara's heavy ordnance. 2 cruisers exploded in tandem, their hulls blossoming into lethal shrapnel that shredded nearby escorts. Shields regenerating. Joss reported, convoy transports are clear of atmosphere. Mara allowed herself a fleeting smile. Well fought. Ready the quantum salvo. 4. The final salvo as the battle reached its crescendo. The Aurora's wrath slipped behind the wreckage of a downed dreadnought. From its belly, the quantum torpedo batteries primed for launch. Each torpedo warhead thrummed with compressed subspace energy. Ready to rip open the fabric of shields. Open the launch bays, Mara ordered. Fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. A dozen quantum torpedoes blasted free, streaking toward Verkar 2 in a precise spread. Every Jarek sensor flared a momentary spike of anticipation before. The torpedoes breached the dreadnought's deflector lattice in simultaneous strikes. Luminous cracks spidered across the shield matrix, cascading into a massive feedback loop. Verkar 2 shuddered as its shields collapsed. At Mara's command, the Wrath and its escorts unleashed a torrent of plasma bolts and railgun slugs. The dreadnought's dorsal plating peeled away, gravity projectors failed, magazine chambers detonated. In a roar that rattled the vacuum of space, Verkar 2 shattered, its fragments raining down toward Nova Arbor like crimson snow. Across the battlefield, Jarek vessels faltered. Without their flagship's command links, they fought unlike wounded beasts, disorganized, demoralized, and ripe for slaughter. Human fighters swarmed them, boarding pods clung to their hulls, and phalanxes of Marines carved corridors of death through alien decks. The duel of leaders within the twisting corridors of Verkar II's bridge. Captain Mara Celine found Admiral Zillian awaiting her. The air was thick with crystalline dust, and the acroidal consoles a flicker of dying glyphs. Zillian's mandibles quivered with restrained fury. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with the calm of a cornered predator. Human, he hissed, his voice a rasping echo. You may have slain my ship, but you cannot end the armada. Mara raised her pulse blade, its humming azure light cutting arcs through the gloom. This armada falls today, Zillian. For every world you conquered, we will reclaim tenfold. He lunged, blade lance crackling with crystalline energy. She parried, sparks cascading down the corridor's walls. Their duel tore through the bridge like a storm razor strikes, spinning thrusts, each impact sending shockwaves through the exosuits they wore. The deck buckled under their force. Consoles exploded in cascades of data fragments. With a final, faint, Mara sidestepped his attack and drove her blade through Zillian's chest carapace. His weapon clattered to the floor as he slumped against a shattered viewport. The great dreadnought trembled, its last power core detonating mere meters away. Mara knelt, blade quivering in her hand. It's over, she whispered. Vi. Dawn of a new era below. The surviving Jarek vessels disengaged, their retreating forms swallowed by the darkness. On the decks of the Aurora's Wrath, cheers echoed through the corridors. Marines embraced engineers. Pilots saluted medics. Refugees wept in gratitude. In Nova Arbor's skies, shield generators hummed with renewed vigor. On the surface, the High Council raised a composite flag, a symbol woven from human and alien-allied emblems over Sanctum Prime's citadel. Across calm channels, BROADCASTS spread the news. The Jarek armada had been shattered. Their conquerors had fallen. On the Wrath's command deck, Mara stood before the viewport, watching the rising twin suns bathe Nova Arbor in gold and violet light. Beside her, Joss Varen placed a hand on her shoulder. Captain, the fleet awaits. Your orders. She allowed herself a moment's peace, inhaling the electric tang of victory. Tell every colony, we fought together, and together we prevailed. Now we rebuild. Galaxy be damned, this time we govern our destiny as the human Armada gathered for the final pullback. A silent promise pulsed through every crew member and refugee. They would never again bow to tyranny. The scars of war would heal, new alliances would form, and from the ashes would rise a federation of free peoples, human and alien alike, bound by a shared vow to guard the light of liberty against any darkness that dared threaten it. Thus ended the final war, and thus began a new chapter for the galaxy, one forged in the crucible of defiance, lit by the courage of a single ship, the Aurora's wrath.